last subject for today. Expressing a confidence level for a combination of software and hardware. So the background is that we had a community discussion around this in April, and we got up to some kind of proposal, and we got a homework to take this back to organizations, discuss it, to see what they thought about it. So we did so, and this is kind of like our presentation for Ericsson. So we're going to take that one and have basic discussion on it. So what we have is, for example, a situation where we have an artifact. It can be a binary or a zip or something. And you probably will attach some kind of confidence level to, for example, if you're doing some pure software thing like fast scanning or something, you probably have it. But then you want to run this in a system. So the idea here is that we place a composition defined event that represents a hardware. And when I talk about representing hardware, this is more like a type of hardware. It's not really instance or something with serial number, but it's more type. And then we would have another composition defined event that connects the software and the hardware. So by that, we would express, okay, this software is running on this type of hardware. And then on that one, you would then express your confidence level. So that would be the confidence that, okay, we know that this software works with this type of hardware. So that would be kind of like the proposal for that one. So the first question is, do you agree on what we discussed on the community meeting? Is this what we said?
One comment, does it really have to be hardware? Because it can be, I can see an application and platform. So different, yeah, virtual platforms. A common example is my service or application is Google Cloud and Azure, and they are kind of hardware for me. So
yeah, I don't recall quite, but we said hardware when we discussed it, right? I'm looking at mine because
that's what you talked about. I missed that meeting, but
okay, sorry.
It was hardware.
Yeah, but on the other hand, would different cloud environments, are those not environments?
Yeah, there are different Kubernetes distributions. There are different features in them.
So I wonder in that case if perhaps you would rather send the confidence level modified for the artifact deployed.
Yeah.
In that case, which is connected to an environment.
Okay.
I think. But if you're the underlying issue that we sort of brought to the table here is if you have software that is, you can run it on multiple pieces, multiple types of hardware. So we don't want to, when we're testing it, when we're testing it and expressing a confidence, we can currently only express it on the binary itself, but the binary is run in a context, in a hardware context, which isn't an environment, and hence this model.
So, for example, in Ericsson, we have basically the same software we're running on different systems, and that would be kind of like the type of hardware that we have. There has been ideas including that type of information inside the confidence level. So basically here in New Zealand 1, they would include that information inside the name there, which is not a nice way to do that. That's why I came up with this proposal.
Just a question, could you sort of substitute that way, so you have an application and then you would drop that into different cloud platforms, different it's a hardware, a virtualized thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Isn't that sort of what you're trying to say? Or is it just one way specific by using it? You don't have to drop it onto multiple hardware, you can drop it onto multiple cloud instances. Having environmental
environment type. environment type is a lot of people.
What's the difference between environment and
Oh, it's
what
the
platform you
environment.
run, you
It's
want
the
to take
environment.
or depend whatever you have.
Not an instance of the environment you're talking about. It's a type, but it's an environment type in that case. So
Yeah.
it's your cloud, environment cloud.
Yeah.
Not be specific to Google Cloud, but
Just thinking because we have virtual hardware.
Yeah.
Where software is simulating
With
hardware.
various versions of
With various
OS and
versions,
whatever. I will be running on different hardware, that's.
Yeah.
What to.
There is another layer like virtual hardware where it's mimicking.
So expressing environment types, I would say.
Yeah, so it's wherever, just, I mean, you want to keep track of something that you're running it on some platform. I would expecting if you're running a Google Cloud or Azure Cloud that you would get the same result. Basically with the idea here, but in this case, it is if you need to track of. Yeah, in your case is cameras. In our case, it's like, okay, we got generations of our base stations that you might be able to run the one, but not the other one. You need to keep track of those two.
So the hardware can be a subunit of the environment. Like if you have, let's say, 10 cameras, the environment with the 10 cameras, the hardware is coming.
So this is more like type of it. Maybe I should jump ahead just to make people less confused. And I'll talk about this picture. So here we're discussing, we still got the artifacts. See if I can get up the voice person. We still got the artifact. And then we're deploying this artifact into a specific environment. And here I would expect you would be have like an instance or a serial number or something that is very, very specific for it. So for example, if you're running it on this one here, you get out logs or something. And then you would probably set confidence for this instance or environment. So this is more specific one. We're running it on this camera. But in this here, we're trying to capture, okay, we're running it on this model of cameras or something. Does that make things more clear or does it make it more confusing?
Because I'm just thinking, let's say take the software and then I want to run this software on Intel and ARM processor. But then there is an operating system. So I'm guessing in those cameras are also it might be the same Linux operating system, but different hardware underlying. So there can be virtualization on top of it.
The problem is basically we have the same software.
Yeah.
If you put it on this camera, you get the feature set A, and if you put it on this camera or hardware, you get feature set B.
Yeah, same.
So that's why we need to, and we can't test the software because the software has to be on the camera to be able to test it. So, and the different tests depending on what feature set you're running. So that's why we.
So that's why I just want to say, putting the term hardware, if we can put some generic term, because
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
That's no problem. We can call it.
otherwise concept-wise, totally agree.
Yeah.
So because then you really think of
Yeah.
the chips, platform, environment, anything.
Yeah, so it's more or less a hardware type.
Yeah.
So yeah, in Ericsson we have several generations of the hardware that you would need to test in order to make sure that they're there. So any more thoughts or comments around this?
I can pile on a little bit. So what we would do is in our tests, we would link to an environment to indicate in what on what exact device did these tests run. So these would they would say this, it's this model and this MAC address. This is exactly where we ran the tests. But when we're expressing confidence, we're not interested in saying, oh, this exact confidence on this MAC address. We want the model instead.
Yeah.
And that's why we're sort of abstracting it on this level. But from a traceability perspective, we are able to look at, we said CLM2, but what device did we actually run this on? And then we can trace it through the tests that we're on.
Yeah.
So with the next picture, we wouldn't use another conference level for a specific artifact here. CLM in this case, that's not the CLM3 then. We would expect this to be the CLM2 as well. So the CLM2 pointing both at the environment and an artifact.
We will start using artifact deployed when we load new software onto devices, but we will probably not send CLM for those. That will be
You
more.
said you wanted to know what device you tested on, which is actually that, where it was deployed.
Yes, but we also have the environment defined that a test case can link to, and there we can indicate what device it was.
Yeah, so this environment defined would be the specific hardware instance. That
Yes, exactly. Exact IP address, MAC address, so
serial number.
yeah.
But we wouldn't do and CLM event.
No, we wouldn't express the CLM for a particular deployment run during the tests. No, I don't think so.
We will deduce that information from.
Well,
From the
it'll be
CLM.
aggregated. So the CLM2 from the prior slide would.
Solve the same use case as this.
Well, it's
One sense.
not the exact same use case. I mean,
We give the same information as this.
But I guess you're running it on a specific device, but you want to generalize it to say that we tested on this specific device, but we now know we're very confident that we run on this range of devices or this type.
yes. I mean, composite number modified is not just about. You could express a confidence even though you have a failing test, for example.
Okay.
So it's not.
Yeah. You might not be interested in confidence level events for a specific hardware instance.
No, it's not like we're tracking per device instance confidence level. That's not interesting. We want to know for the P1234 product. What's our confidence in that given this particular artifact?
There'd probably be one particular case where you may want to know exactly which is. I think something very, very particular. You want to repeat that particular thing in that particular instance that you tried it on.
Correct.
And maybe some specifics, but only then.
Yes. So it's a more a matter of it's a traceability concern, not a confidence
It's not a
aggregation.
confidence matter.
No, exactly.
It's a traceability matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that could also be in the continuous deployment scenario, for example, if you would deploy software to your cameras continuously. You send off a deploy event when it's deployed, and then you maybe run some smoke test or something on the acceptance test on that camera after it's deployed. They want to say that, it was deployed successfully, and now we also tested this successfully. We have some confidence on this specific.
Yes.
And then you would probably want to send such confidence level event, which could maybe trigger a redeployment or a revert or something.
Yes. So we might want to send some kind of confidence level modified, but not the sort of platform wide. Can we release this piece of software?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I just had to remember it. Sorry. I just caught up in your discussions. Yeah, so the composition defined, empty composition defined to describe hardware. Would you, I mean, each time here, would you, when you, for instance, deploy a new thing on the hardware, would you create a new, to describe that hardware, would you only create it once or would you create it each time?
Yeah, probably that refers to the previous discussion there on what is this event? Is that something that you only send once for?
Yeah.
I mean, the environment is Windows.
Yeah.
It will be one event that was sent in 1984.
Yeah.
And then everyone would refer to that one. Or should we create a new event with just the name Windows in it?
Yeah.
Every time.
Luckily, our products don't live for 40 years. I would imagine.
As Windows does.
Yeah. I would imagine that we would send it once and then attempt to look up, so that we could somehow track, in what this particular product, in what other the upper CD, the CD combined, what CD combined are there for a given CD hardware, for example.
I don't think that CD combined is any controversial. It's just going to the previous discussion. Should we really have that long-lived event? Expectedly long-lived event as the CD hardware event in this picture would be. And the flow context as talked about before. Is that?
I mean, I guess you can choose how you would like to implement it yourself. I
Of
mean,
course you can, but this would be a recommended way to do it.
Yeah.
If we publish this, so then, it's a very good point. But is it really how we should do it? Or should
so, I
we-
mean, it's not an issue to create a new one each time either, because you can just look up and you take the latest. I mean,
Yeah, but then
if there
there is not a new definition every time. So the time step of that definition doesn't really say anything.
Yeah.
So an option could of course be to include that CD hardware name in the CD combined event as a data.
I can actually see a sort of an extension to this, which makes it a little bit more, I will say, more complex. But if you want to sort of check in which context your software works, and then you have more relationship than just sort of your underlying hardware. You want to look at it because you may have other play in your surroundings that you're supposed to interact with and check. They all relate to definitions of whether you work or not just the hardware underneath or the platform. So you may extend that into a larger sort of set of, if you call that environment, whatever you call it. But that is your context in which you're running, where you should perform and presumably deliver according to specifications. So you may want to track all these dependencies as well, not just the nearest, closest part, but everything that surrounds you that impacts your performance and your behavior. It could be your infrastructure part, it could be your sub-services, your related services, anything that you relate to in your world where you sort of do your software. Because any one of those can actually impact your performance and your behavior, and be a result of a problem, a fault.
That's a good point to track them, but I think, as we've discussed before, to represent them, you would kind of, I guess, do it by environment defined, and you could have a file which it refers to, which kind of give a broader description of all the services included. Or
again, it seems like we're again going towards the traceability aspect more. So I mean, it's relevant if you would conceivably have different confidence level depending on your various other dependencies.
Yeah, because you sort of express your confidence, presumably because you know that it's in that context you're supposed to run, and you're also proven yourself working. That gives you the confidence. And unless you have tested it or otherwise seen how it's been behaving in the past, you can't express any confidence. And it's no point in expressing confidence in anything that they've tried out anyway. And depends on what other variables you want to capture in your confidence. So if you want to be true to anything or to the entity, you should have all your dependencies cleared out and express your confidence, saying that I've taken into all these factors and tested it, and that's my confidence. And if any of these sort of variables change, then you may know why things are going south.
But I think that's a traceability question. I mean, we express confidence in. I mean, we have a hardware product might have different revisions, say, but we don't care. We say we trust this piece of software running on this model, be it Rev A or Rev B of the hardware. It doesn't matter. if you want to look into traceability, you know, where did we run these tests? Where was it on Rev A or Rev B? We want to, you know, be able to find that information. But confidence level wise, we don't care. We express a positive confidence regardless of the hardware revision. I'm not saying it needs to be that case, but it could be. So I think what you express confidence in depends entirely on your context.
Yeah.
But you do have a point that there could very well be a case where you want to capture much more than just this is really narrow the hardware. That's a problem we happen to have. But
if your context
probably
is
a larger question.
If your context is controlled, limited, well confined, and of course you have fewer variables, then it's easier. But if you're living in an ecosystem where you have loads of variables from different points, then of course your confidence in whether you should, you know, working well or not, that's certainly depending on how many variables you have and whether you have sort of been there, tested, and also maybe accumulated data over time from different instances where you have those variables being run, and therefore you also have confidence in this particular set in different run environments. Boost your confidence or increase your confidence, knowing that yes, it works well with this, and that, you know, variables and whatever you have. It all depends on the purposes of producing your confidence here and whether you can do that in an early stage. It's sort of battle proven is sort of the ultimate confidence in this context, I would suppose. But before you're battle proven, what confidence can you expose to that? And how would you express it? Because I believe this is what you ultimately aim at, having, you know, something that works in your real production with hardware, with everything around it, and express that as your confidence. Then I assume that the ultimate goal will be to say, yes, I'm battle proven.
For me, that sounds like the level of detail you choose to kind of model it.
So for example, in this one here, it's more of if you, for example, take a ready software system, I mean, it's pretty complex and there are a lot of categories, but in some kind of way you want to capture, okay, was this run on this generation or this generation, which is of course a very broad thing. A generation could be, we might run a test with one generation, but there is several components in one test, another components in one test, but you have like an abstraction and one expressing kind of abstraction. So in that case, I find this pretty good, that there is at least some way to describe hardware in suitable abstraction. Maybe it might be a business abstraction or something. It's on that level you want to trace it, so you don't need to trace it on the details.
What I'm trying to say is that it's sort of selectable. What complexity you want to put into this sort of CD thing, what environments, what variables you want to have. If you want to sort of express only one factor and sort of focus on that, because in reality you can't check all the other variables, you're focusing on these ones, and that will be your definition for your CD, your hardware. But if you want to be broad, if you want to be more serious, more detailed, then of course you can put in all the variables and all the factors, but then you have to work much harder in order to sort of check them off and try that. But then you can go much further, expressing your confidence in battle proven, so forth. But it's your choice, of course. But just saying that maybe something, you know, below that CD hardware part, which may sort of expand into something more, if you want to.
Yes, we did discuss if I remember calls that we started with a CD and they have a name just, but if you want to go detailed, you could probably have more compositions under it. For example, if you want to describe in details all the different components going into it, you could. But in most cases, it might just be okay with a name or something, and then you have the description in some external systems. But of course, you could go down and express it in more detail in Eiffel.
But in that case, you could actually resend that one, but the resend one or send it again, but with more links to other. So you basically reuse the scheme or whatever of this that you have a confidence level on a combined CD, but the next instance would have a much wider tree below the hardware thing, with much more detail. If you want to go to, in our case, we go to number of photons in the air or something like that. So you can go really big. But the possibility, this gives the possibility to do that. There's no restriction on you using the precision event.
And you can go on the width as well if you want to describe multi-system hardware and software. Yeah, I think this is like the best way probably.
Yeah.
To do it as we have it right now. I mean,
And then a short one about this one, that this, unless you had some hiccups with this one, but we have more an idea that you could also run it with, if you have a artifact deployed, you have a specific instance that you're deploying it to, then the hardware might point to, or environment defined might point to runtime environment, who's then defined via seed events, where you specify your hardware in more detail. Will you?
I'm not sure that might be abusive. But I don't think. But
would that only be like the hardware CD, or would it be the hardware and software?
I think that I think mine was referring to original runtime environment was like a Docker image or something, right?
yes, Docker image or a JDM or something like that. So again, you can have the environment in which the artifact is.
So not an instantiation of the runtime or.
Well, sort of what as you'd say that an environment is an instantiation of the runtime environment, or
I guess that it would be runtime environment pointed to a recipe or something. So in the simple case, if you have a Docker image, yes, okay, what was it run with? Well, this Docker image.
Yeah.
yeah. So exactly. So the runtime environment could be a Docker image. The environment could be a host, for example, or a Kubernetes cluster or something, and then the artifact would be running in that environment.
Maybe this is a little bit of a stretch, but it can be one thing, right? But this was the main kind of idea and discussion around it. But it seems like we seem pretty happy with it right now. So is there any more comments or questions around this you want to bring up? No? I would say that would be all for me.